Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. My name is T.S.V. Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. Today is 28th August 2023. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube, hariboltrsvnectar. The complete name of this vlog is Hardan, 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 Haribol, TRSV, Nectar, Nectar, Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. Today, in this video, there is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of all that we have been doing in my previous videos. Hence, kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of my other videos. Let us continue with the topic of discussion for today's video. Before beginning this, I would like to unconditionally apologize for the incompletion of yesterday's episode number 521, which happened because one accidental occurrence which had happened inadvertently. That was precisely the reason why yesterday's video was stopped abruptly. Though it is not exactly because of me, yet I accept this as my personal fault and want to unconditionally apologize for it. So let us continue our theory analysis and research on today's topic. We have been discussing about the importance of focus in the psyche of a human living entity. In that process, we have been discussing about several case histories, both material as well as spiritual, that come to our mind to analyze and prove or authenticate the importance of focus in this life and the psyche of human living entities. Today we shall discuss the case history of another spiritual legend and icon to authenticate the same topic focus for our benefit. In the outskirts of the temple town of Madurai in the state of Tamil Nadu in India in the mid 19th century. There lived a very pious, orthodox, spiritual, and intellectually inclined family. It was a large brood in which several of the members, both in the 19th as well as in the previous centuries, had become monks, sannyasis, rishis, maharishis, etc. In other words, several of the members of this family had gone the spiritual way. In one family unit of that large family, the patriarch of that family was working as a court pleader. This guy had one elder son and one middle and one younger son. That is, he had three sons. We are talking about the middle son whose case history we are going to discuss in this particular video. This middle son was born on 30th December 1879. This boy was eventually christened Venkataraman. This guy, as a human living entity, had something very special in him. Hence, here we would like to take a detour from the main subject to analyze this situation properly. We all know by now that there is one spiritual whole from which several spiritual sparks, individual spiritual sparks, fly out like fire sparks ejecting out of a main fireplace. This may happen advertently, inadvertently, by design, by default, deliberately, or otherwise. The fact remains that some spirit sparks keep getting ejected out of the spirit hole time and again, and this has been happening for times immemorial. When these spirit sparks come out, unlike the fire sparks which eventually get extinguished by the air, these spirit sparks do not get extinguished but they float aimlessly in the space. This may happen for years or centuries depending upon several circumstances pertaining to that spirit spark. These spirit sparks had got ejected probably because the Supreme Personality of Godhead wanted them to be ejected out of the spirit hole. However, whatever the reason may be, these spirit souls, after floating endlessly and aimlessly in a trance in the space, suddenly come across what is known as the material universe. Here suddenly this spirit spark remembers that spirit is supreme personality of Godhead's superior energy and the matter is the supreme personality of Godhead's inferior energy. When they suddenly realize this, these spirit sparks, in their gross ignorance, get puffed up with complacence and false ego and overconfidence. They feel that because they are God's superior energy, they may try to lord it over the material world. How wrong they are, they realize only when they get in touch with this material world. As soon as these spirit sparks get in touch with the material world, they change their identity to a raw, unevolved spirit soul. The spirit spark now becomes a hapless spirit soul. However, when it gets in touch with the material world, there is a friction in the material world. The material world knows that spirit is superior energy and it itself is inferior energy. However, the fact remains that both energies actually belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and hence he treats both of them equally. Qualitatively, one spirit soul may be superior to the inferior material energy, but quantitatively, the same material energy, when collectivized, becomes huge and very, very powerful. When the two get in touch, a reaction happens. This reaction is where the material world gets visibly irritated by such reaction or connection with the spirit soul. When it does, then to avoid that irritation, the same material world begins wrapping this spirit soul which has come in touch with the material world with four layers of material body. These layers are as follows. The first layer is known as that of causal body of intelligence and logic. The second layer is the astral body of feelings and emotions. The third body is that of etheric senses, namely sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And the fourth body, which is known as gross body, made up of four elements, namely air, fire, water, and earth. Every spirit soul which has been cocooned into these four layers of material body, then again loses its identity as a spirit soul and becomes a living entity. Henceforth, it will be called a living entity. There are several species of living entities. The living entity that the spirit soul has now become is identified by the gross body that it dons in a particular lifetime. The species of every living entity is like that of a cell, an algae, amoeba, weeds, grass, plants, shrubs, creepers, trees, worms, insects, reptiles, amphibians, birds, bees, beasts, and ultimately human beings. There are at least 4 lakh human being species in this world. In other words, there are 4 lakh forms of living entities who don the gross body of a human being. When a particular living entity gets born as a human living entity, its destiny and karma begins. Before continuing, let me tell you that as soon as a spirit soul becomes a living entity, it gets into an orbit of endless births and deaths in different forms as living entities. This includes that of human beings. Till the time they had not been born as humans, these living entities only have memories of what they experienced or did as a living entity in this material world. However, as soon as it dons the body of a human being, just because a human being has a sixth sense or instinct, karma and destiny starts operating in the case of that living entity. Now, what is karma? Karma is the result of actions of any human living entity in any particular birth. This karma may be good, bad, or indifferent. This karma may be done in one lifetime, and the results of that karma may be worked out in that lifetime itself. However, it does not happen that way. A residue of work in progress of karma in every lifetime invariably gets stored at the time when that human living entity passes out on in that lifetime. This residue is stored in what is known as Sanchit karma in the superconscious memory of that human living entity. The basis for its next birth depends on a slice of this Sanchit karma called Prarabdha karma that becomes the foundation for the birth of that living entity in the next birth. This goes on and on. It is quite possible that a residue of Sanchit karma of several births is mixed together and is stored in the superconscious memory of that living entity. In that case, when that living entity gets one slice of his or her Sanchit karma as Prarabdha karma for another lifetime, then it is a multicolored Sanchit karma from various births. This becomes the foundation for that human living entity in the next birth. I am telling you all this because it is going to apply in the case of Venkatraman also. In the society, 75% of the living entities just float around in a trance without any aim, trying to lord it over this material world in ignorance and suffering various pains, deprivations, failures, etc., or enjoying a lot of happiness, pleasure, success, etc. Whatever it is, it only adds to the experience and maturity of that living entity. This is 75% of the society at any given time. However, 25% of this human living entities belong to another category. These are those living entities which were once in the 75% category but who later got evolved enough to ultimately realize through several births that this is not their real purpose. Their real identity is that of a spirit soul which is an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When these living entities finally realize this, they surrender themselves to the God, Supreme Personality of Godhead. After some time, after a few births, they are likely to get assignments from God when they take birth in this material world. These assignments may be material or may be spiritual. When a particular living human entity is assigned one mission, that assignment or mission becomes that person's representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This that living entity has to understand in due course of time. It does not happen overnight. When the assignment is given or bestowed upon a human living entity, whether material or spiritual, then this living entity begins from scratch while living out that assignment or while trying to achieve success in that assignment. Slowly but steadily, this assignment grows into the psyche of the living entity to such an extent that in one birth, which may be in future, the same assignment becomes a part and parcel or extension of that living human entity. In such a case, this human being cannot separate himself or herself from that assignment. He or she gets totally addicted to that assignment. Only then focus comes into picture. When this happens, this living entity uses all its focus, energy, and concentration on achieving success in that particular assignment in hand. This assignment may be material or spiritual. Out of 25%, 20% gets only material assignments. Only the top 5 are likely to get spiritual assignments. Venkatraman belonged to that 5%. Sometime before, several births ago, he got one such spiritual assignment. He also started from scratch when he started working on that assignment. Slowly but steadily, due to his sanchit karma of spiritual kind on that assignment, he progressed through the rungs of the ladder of spirituality through several births. So much so that he met this human living entity reached a point where he could get a spot as a seeded player. This time, the same human living entity took birth as Venkat Raman in a family where several members of that family had been sages, rishis, maharishis, etc. over the centuries. This achievement could have happened only because this human living entity, which was now born as Venkatraman, had got evolved enough spiritually. Now, Venkatraman was born in this particular family as one very evolved spiritual living human entity. In his childhood, Venkatraman was not interested in schooling or studies. Instead, he just whiled away his time either playing or swimming or brawling with other kids of his age. So much so that he was a pain in the sight of his elder brother, his mother, and his uncles. However, this was not going to be permanent. When Venkatraman was 16, his father passed on. When his father passed on, that pious man's corpse was placed in the front room of that family house. When Venkatraman, the 16-year-old, joined the crowd that was surrounding this corpse, someone told him, "Your father has passed on." Venkatraman was intrigued. "If my father has passed on, where did he go?" This person said, "Your father went to another world." Venkatraman asked, "If it is so, then how is it that my father's corpse is lying here?" This 16-year-old boy was intrigued. He could not realize that the pious father had left his gross body here to live for his heavenly abode. This made Venkatraman quite curious. He began thinking about death in general and self realization in particular. He wanted to know who exactly was he as a living entity. This happened, or this thought happened in the mind or intelligence of Venkatraman only because the living entity which was born as Venkatraman was so much spiritually evolved. Several people were looking at the corpse, but no one had this thought in his or her mind. Only Venkatraman had it. This intrigued him no end. Now, this boy loitered around aimlessly, thinking about this only. In the meantime, they all relocated to his uncle's place in Madurai city. Here, Venkatraman spent a lot of time in the temple of Madurai Meenakshi Amman, the consort of Lord Shiva. This is a very huge temple which is famous not only in Madurai or Tamil Nadu but in India and the world over. When Venkatraman went inside this temple and began loitering around aimlessly, he found several tiny statues placed on the across the wall in the huge temple. He curiously asked some priest, "Who are these statues?" The priest replied, "They are demigods called Alvas who have been great devotees of Madurai Meenakshi. Not only Alvas but also Nayanmars." Venkatraman was curious and visibly excited. He wanted that one day his own statue must be placed in that temple along with that of other Nayanmars and Alvas. This happened in future also. Today, Venkatraman has his own statue placed in the Madurai Meenakshi Amman temple. Anyway, one day he asked one of his relatives, I have not seen you here for quite some time. Where were you? This man said. I had gone to Tiruvannamalai, which is near Madras, now Chennai, the capital of Tamil Nadu. Venkatraman became so excited that he took some money and left for Tiruvannamalai, never to return to Madurai. He went there, climbed up the hill to the temple of Lord Shiva and began meditating endlessly to inquire about the real identity of his own self. At the age of 18, Venkatraman had already become a sannyasi and a monk. So focused was he to his aim and assignment to inquire about the self that this guy came to be known eventually as Ramana Maharshi. This guy remained in Tiruvannamalai from the age of 18 till the age of 72. He never moved out of Tiruvannamalai during this period, yet he became internationally famous as a very renowned and knowledgeable saint. He was totally spiritual. Several devotees and other godmen, saints, rishis, and maharishis visited Ramana Maharshi to get benefited by this man's tejas, charisma, spiritual knowledge, and his own experience as a saint. This went on till even exalted human beings like Yogananda Paramahamsa and other such exalted saints came to visit him. Venkatraman never moved physically out of Tiruvannamalai, but such was the erudition, experience, knowledge, and spiritual maturity of this person that whatever he said or talked about was duly recorded as an audio uh, or in bookish language. That is, several books of teachings from Ramana Maharshi were published, and his own headquarters became his ashrama. Now, as on date, there are several branches of Ramana Maharshi's ashrama all over the world, with millions of devotees flocking to these ashramas to get benefited by the spiritual tejas, affluence, and the effulgence of this great man. We all must take a leaf out of the life of Ramana Maharshi, who passed on at the age of 72, but who proved to us that if you concentrate on your assignment with absolute focus, you are likely to reach very dizzy heights, either material or spiritual. one day or the other you are likely to become exalted, an icon, and a legend. This is all I wanted to say in this particular video. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular case history. Please give me your own expert views, thoughts, ideas, and opinions so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on fiction, spiritualism, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.